We will get started. Greg Braden is a 5-time New York Times best-selling author. He's a scientist, international educator, and renowned as a pioneer in the emerging paradigm based in science, social policy, and human potential. From 1979 to 1991, Greg worked as a problem solver during times of crisis for Fortune 500 companies, including Cisco Systems, where he became the first technical operations manager in 1991. He continues today to be all about problem solving.
Docking successful.
His work reveals deep insights into the new human story and how these discoveries inform policies of everyday life and the emerging world. To date, his research has led him to 15 film credits and 12 award-winning books, now published in over 40 languages. Some of my most favorite of his books, The Divine Matrix, The Wisdom Codes. He's also got another book, the God Code. He's got so many beautiful books. Highly recommend checking them out. Greg is a proud recipient of numerous awards, including the Walden Award for the Scott, the Illuminate Award for Conscious Visionaries. I was part of that experience with him, and he is listed in the United Kingdom's Watkins Journal among the top 100 of the world's most spiritually influential people living for the 7th consecutive year. So you are in the presence of a beautiful soul, a beautiful human being that really is all about heart and love and evolution to the highest level, where we are focused on being more loving, more kind, more compassionate, where we embrace our divinity. And he's going to tell you all about how to do this from some really cool stories and ways and practices that you may not know. So I will end it here, bring you right into our conversation. And as always, my friend, thank you for being here on this journey together, being you is you. I love you. And here we go. This episode is being sponsored by Lumen. I love my Lumen. It is like my best friend. It tracks my metabolism. So if you have any health issues, autoimmune condition, or you're going through menopause, or you're just trying to release whatever. Emily, oh my goodness. Okay, so I want to tell you something. I am always grateful to be in your earbuds, to be here with you. Today is just such a special day. I cannot even tell you the honor it is to have our amazing guest back. Greg Braden, one of my most favorite people on the planet. I think he knows this. He is one of the wisest, heart-centered human beings I know.
Payload released.
I am
Docking
so grateful,
successful.
Greg, to have you
Payload
back.
released. Payload released.
Wow, I'm like literally feeling tears. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for being here. We're going to dive in, and
Payload
just thank
released.
you for making me
Payload released.
time and your gracious, heart-centered energy.
Payload released. Payload
Thank you
released.
so much. Thank you for those. I have a Cancerian male, and if I cry, my voice will change, and it messes up the whole interview. So what I will say is this is a media day for me. So I start the morning, and I have back-to-back interviews. And I wish I had started with yours, with those beautiful words and that warm welcome to launch me into my day. Feelings mutual, and this is completely unscripted. We have no idea what we're going to talk about. So I want to thank you for your trust in sharing me with your community. But I think your community is my family as well. So I'm just I'm honored to share this virtual stage with you. And there's so many places that we could go, so many things that we could touch upon today, and I'm gonna trust. I said off camera, this is a dance, and I'm really happy for the lady to lead. So I'm gonna follow your lead in this dance. So let's see where we go.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm actually going to do something I haven't really done. I usually do this off camera, but I'm actually going to just take a beat. I'm going to close my eyes and ask the divine matrix, the divine, to just inspire us, this conversation, and tap into the greater consciousness of everyone listening. I know this conversation will bless all and uplift all. And because there's so many areas I could go in with you, and I'm just going to be asked to be guided, and feeling very, very thankful to be here with you. All right. So what's coming to me, we're just going to I love, this is my favorite kind of conversation where we're like, I don't know, who knows? We'll see where we go. We're just going to We're going to go. I do think the first area that I want to talk about this whole realm of consciousness and potentiality. And to
Payload
kind of break
released.
it down, I think it can feel overwhelming. I think that it can also, I know because I get comments about this, like, all right, how do we know? Are there any signs that consciousness is shifting in the planet? How do I do this on my own?
Now become online.
What are you seeing? What are you, I know you're an expert in this, and you can start anywhere you want. I'm going to just open with a big old question about consciousness and the shift on our globe and potentiality, Greg, and let you have a party.
Well, thank you, Julie. No, I'm a student just like you, and I'm always learning. I think I'm a good listener, and I have made a conscious effort to become a better listener, because there's a world speaking to us right now. There's a world speaking to us about what it is that's happening, and I'm just going to say to our viewers, it's no secret that we're living a time of extremes. I mean, that can't be a secret to anyone, from climate change to social change to
Docking
buckling
successful.
and collapsing financial systems, and the wars. 22 wars are being waged on our planet right now. We hear about one or two in the media. 22 wars are happening right now. This isn't business as usual, and it is difficult sometimes to stay focused on our lives. It's difficult to stay optimistic sometimes, and I want to just share a story. Can I share a story? A quick story?
Oh my gosh, you have free reign. Absolutely.
Cool. I was on a plane not long ago between Atlanta, Georgia, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. I call them the A cities. They both start with A. And it was about a 3-hour flight, and I sat next to an Air Force cadet. He was young, and he just got married, and we were talking about the world. And he told me that he and his wife had chosen to have no children. And I said, why is that? He says, why would we bring a child into the world? The world that we see right now. And he told me all the bad things that are happening through his eyes as a military man. And I said, I completely understand and respect your point of view. And I shared a little bit different point of view about my sense of this rare and precious moment that we're living in right now. And I asked him a question. I said, why would you deny a soul the opportunity to come in to the world right now when everything is up for grabs? Everything is being unrooted, and one idea from one person has the chance to be heard and to be accepted. One idea can change the world in a way now that we haven't seen in a very, very long time, certainly not in our lifetimes. And then the plane landed, and we were in baggage, and he picked up his duffel bag, and he was like, he didn't even say goodbye. He was running for the door. And I said, hey, aren't you going to say goodbye? And he says, oh, yeah. And I said, you're in a big hurry. And he says, are you kidding? After that conversation, I'm going to go home and make a baby. So he said that he wanted to bring a child into the world after having that conversation. And I said, yeah, good deal. There we go. One more new life into the world. And it's all about perspective. My experience, my understanding, this is the 43rd year I've done this work in one form or another, and I've been blessed to travel into some of the most remote, isolated, pristine, magnificent, beautiful places remaining in the world today. Archaeological sites of temples and the remains of ancient civilizations, to understand what it is that they knew that we may have forgotten, or maybe we never knew about our time. And I used to think it was for the temples and for the archaeology. And what I discovered, Julie, very quickly, is it was more about the people, the indigenous people that preserve that wisdom, that still live in those places. And meeting with them and their perspective. And they have always said that we would live this time in history, where we would live a time of the convergence of cycles that would change our planet. They said, you won't recognize your nations, you won't recognize your borders, you won't recognize your own neighborhood, you won't recognize your life. And they've said that for over 40 years. 1986 was the first trip that I made, and largely those ideas have been discounted until recently. I was doing a radio interview with a New York DJ who I interviewed with in 2012, the craziness around 2012. And in 2012, he said, oh yeah, 2012, when are all these changes you're talking about going to happen? And then I interviewed with him earlier this year, or late last year. And he said, when are these changes going to stop? So he's acknowledging that we are, living this very unique time. So for me, there are so many layers that we can go into about what is happening and what's changing. And we can talk about climate change, social change, financial change. We can talk all of those things, and they're important. And they need to be discussed with kindness so that we can find resolution. But ultimately, Julie, on a deep level, there is a battle that is playing out for our thoughts, for our beliefs, what we believe to be true about ourselves and our world and where we come from. There's a battle for our very humanness. Our very humanness is on the line because there are proposals to replace our natural biology with synthetic technology, with chips in the brain, sensors under the skin, chemicals in the blood. And the reason this is important is because it reveals the deepest battle of all. This will answer the question about consciousness. It is through our humanness that we have access to what I'll call our divinity. And then I'll define this. The divine nature of what it means to be human. Now, a lot of people, when I say this in a live audience, they think we're talking about religion because divinity has been linked with religion.
Released.
If you look at the definition, this is fascinating. Divinity has nothing to do with religion.
Released.
What the definition is, divinity is our ability to transcend perceived human limitations. Not just to survive, but to transcend, to thrive in the presence of the limits, and they may not even be real, perceived. They're the limitations that we've been programmed to accept about our abilities, our limited abilities, or our powerlessness. So divinity is about accessing that part of ourself that often is veiled by the fear of all of the extremes I'm talking about. So we can focus, spend your life focusing on climate change or on collapsing financial and economic systems. It's all important. On society, on social, on politics, it's all important. However, ultimately, those are the diversions that keep us from accessing, I think, the real goal of what this time in our lives is all about. And it's our ability to become, maybe for the first time, fully human. We may not even know what it means to be fully human in our lives because at least 3 generations now, we've been told, and we're still teaching our kids this in school today, we've been told that biology, our carbon biology is flawed, that we are flawed by our very nature. And among those flaws are emotion, human emotion, they say, when they teach this in the schools. And there are scientists that believe this. Human emotion clouds our ability to think clearly and to make good decisions.
Propellant low.
They say that human intimacy, the intimacy between a man and a woman that creates a new life, is imperfect because you never know the outcome. And you don't know what that child is going to be like. Eye color, hair color, fast twitch muscles for athletics or IQ.
Payload released.
So here's where I'm going with this. We've been conditioned to believe that we are powerless victims, and as victims that we need a savior. And our savior is being touted as technology. So technology is being dangled out there to entice
Payload
us
released.
to replace our humanness with computer chips in the brain, chemicals in the body, sensors under the skin, AI, artificial intelligence. And this is where science and consciousness are really coming together in a very interesting way, because to have artificial intelligence, we have to define what is consciousness. What is intelligence? What is sentience? Is AI a sentient form of life? We've got to define all of those things. So what's happening, Julie, is we're in the process of this tremendous shift on the planet and in our lives. In the midst of that process, we are developing these technologies, and we cannot complete that development until we understand ourselves. To understand, if we want to build real AI, and I'll define what I mean by that in just a minute. If we want to build actual intelligence and not just a program that mimics some predetermined answers, if we want actual intelligence, we can't do that until we understand our consciousness, our intelligence. And this is, divinity plays a very powerful role in this. Divinity, our ability to transcend perceived human limitations. This is the part of us that's ageless, it's timeless. We all have divinity. Sometimes we veil that divinity from our access. We do it in one of three ways. We can deny our own divinity. We have free will. We can deny that we are anything special. And there's people, I know people in my family that do that in my community. That's number one. Number two, we can be conditioned out of our divinity by our family, by society, by mainstream media, by what we teach in the classroom, the way we think about ourselves. We can be conditioned to deny our divinity. And number three, through technology. When we replace our natural biology with synthetics, synthetic tissue, synthetic, and I just want to be clear, there are times when we need
payload released,
maybe an artificial heart, or an artificial kidney, or an artificial hip, or a knee, and that's not what I'm talking about. There is a movement to replace our entire bodies with synthetic material and preserve only the brain for immortality. That is a movement that is afoot right now. Here's why this is a problem. It is the DNA in our bodies, the unique formula of DNA in our bodies, that is the antenna that tunes us to our divinity in the field. The divinity isn't in here. We access that divinity through the gift of the biology that we were given when we appeared 200,000 years ago. You take away the DNA, or you alter the DNA, and there are attempts to do that as well, and we no longer, it's like turning the dial on a radio. Now you lose the station that holds your divinity. So when we give our biology away, when we begin to replace our natural abilities with artificial technology, our abilities begin to atrophy. The neurons that we once used may not develop because a chip is doing it for us, and the body says you don't need that anymore. So there are layers and layers and layers of things happening. Ultimately, I think we are being tested. We're being pushed to the edge of who we believe we are in lieu of accessing the deep truth of our existence and what our divinity is really all about. Just to define divinity, I'm just going to share, I was at the Grammys with Martha. Martha, my wife, is a Grammy. She's been a Grammy ballot. She's a voting member of the Grammys, and I got to accompany her to the Grammys a couple of years ago. And got to talk to a lot of musicians. Not all of them had Grammy Awards, but they were all nominated in some way. And every one of them, I asked them a question, and everyone answered the question the same way. I said, where did that beautiful music come from? Or the words to that song that just touched my soul so deeply, where did those words come from? And Julie, every one of them said, it didn't come from me. They said it came through me from something else. I had to get out of the way to allow this music to come through me, or these words, these powerful words to come through me. That's our divinity. Our intuition is an aspect of our divinity. Our imagination, our creativity. When we express something deep within us in this physical world, reaching to find that something, that's our divinity. That's what I'm talking about. And the reason it's important is because when we have a clear connection with our divinity, we are less vulnerable to fear. We are less vulnerable to the fear of the uncertain world that we find ourselves in. It's still out there. It doesn't change the world. It changes the way we respond to the world we are less vulnerable to the fear, and that means we are less vulnerable to the agenda and the ideas that other people have about what our lives should look like and what our world should look like. Another way of saying that is when our divinity is veiled, when we feel separate from our divinity, we feel lost and we feel powerless. Then we become more vulnerable, more susceptible to other people's ideas because we are lost. We don't know who we are. So consciousness is what underlies all of this. Consciousness
Payload released.
is the fertile field within which our divinity exists. Divinity is an aspect of consciousness. You can think of consciousness as the container and our divinity as a vessel within that container. So where I see things happening, that was a long answer to a short question, but what I see happening is that people all over the world, this just isn't in America or in my community, we are undergoing change faster
Payload
than
released.
we've ever undergone change in a single lifetime. And for some people, it is more change than they can really accept.
Payload
because
released.
they've never been given the tools to embrace the resilience of change. And so what's happening is it's forcing people to come to a deeper
Payload
understanding
released.
of who they are and what their relationship is with their own bodies when it comes to the immune system, for sure, with the people under their roofs that they share everyday life with, as belief systems clash over the family dinner table and in the living room, after dinner. We share a house, we share blood, we have, common ancestors, and we could not be thinking more differently. And that pushes us to come to terms with who we are and what's true in our lives. And then now the whole conversation of AI and the role that we are going to allow AI to play in our society and in our personal lives. We can't answer that question until we know who we are. How much of ourselves are we going to give away to the technology? How much of ourselves are we going to give away to AI? We can't answer that until we know who we are and what we're giving away. So I wanted to lay that foundation. It's a long answer to a short question, and it opens the door to a lot of directions where we can go in our conversations. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I want to say, I know this community, whoever's listening, first of all, we're going to have all your information. You have so many incredible events where you go into these different aspects deeper. I know this is we could do days on this topic. I really appreciate I love that you dove into the divinity aspect. And to me, what's coming up is really to get how sacred this is, the fact that with the DNA that we have, with the connection that's possible, that we have an ability to connect. I love what you said. I love how you said this, the consciousness in the fertile field, that the divinity is that fertile field which our consciousness exists. And I think, for those listening who are up against, what do I believe? And there's fear, and fear can be so disempowering. It can affect the immune system. I mean, I won't get into my story with it, but I can say that I know, as somebody who breathes and lives this, I found myself kind of in this fear bug, where I was like, what is happening? I was waking up in the middle of the night with fear thoughts, really scared. And I must say, I feel like anyone listening, anyone here, our family, you, we chose to be here at this time. This is an extraordinary time, as you said. And I think for those listening, just where to start with, I think because it's that self to symphony, how do we as individuals, I know anyone listening wants to be their best self, wants to connect with their divinity. I think of that as your USG. Honestly, that's what I mean by that. It's your connection to the divine. It's your intuition. Where do we start? Especially, and that's a big question, but health, emotions, programming that we've been subjected to. You can just go anywhere you want with that, but I just keep hearing people where do I begin, Greg?
It's a good question.